Welcome, everybody. This is Awkward Conversations. We are Seth and Sandra Dunn, and we like to come to you with topics that are maybe a bit unique or a little challenging, a little awkward, a little different, and that might be like between Sandra and I, or it might be in our culture. It might be among us as Christians. It could be lots of things. But today's Awkward Conversation is a little unique as far as knowing how to title it. I don't know if you thought of a title.
It might have an awkward title. I didn't have
Well, it might because here's rather than giving a title, I'll tell kind of what it's about. So we had a situation opportunity this week where we had both read something, and my response to it, I made a comment, and my response to it was very different than Sandra's. And it struck me, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, because in this case, which, I mean, I have to admit this would be a bit more normal than not, but in this case, I saw it as sort of almost kind of a jab, or I wouldn't say insult, but not negative.
You saw it negative.
She saw it as really quite positive, as a compliment. And I'm like, how in the world do two people... And we didn't read it together.
No.
Two people read something at two different times and have such different response. It was the scenario was no different.
Yeah.
But our response, and it just really struck me that what a unique thing. We bump into this in our culture in general. We bump into it as a married couple. Mm-hmm. I think I bump into it in my inner dialogue. I think we bump into this with friends, and what do they say? Communication, the art of life, right? And to some degree, I'm like, wow, what I got communicated and what she got communicated were two totally different things. And I'd be curious what the person that actually wrote what we read actually meant. Because this might be a whole third thing, of course.
If I run into her, I will ask.
You will ask. So I don't know. We talked about this a little bit. And so I said, why don't we make this an awkward conversation? Because I do think, and there's no question, like in this case, I went back and I thought about it. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Why did I see it as a jab or a negative? What in me, took that way? Because I quite honestly, I would rather default to a positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Than a negative.
Yeah.
What did that do to you? I mean, when you heard me say...
I was shocked, which what? How are you reading that like that?
It was that strong of a difference.
Yeah,
in this case. Yeah, that's interesting.
I actually have an example that I'm going to share that is going to make this more awkward because he doesn't know it's coming.
Oh, no, that's great.
But in this situation... I was like, what? How do you not know that that's actually a compliment?
Right.
How do you read that like that? And and I think maybe this applies to, and I don't know if this is true. You can tell me what you think. But I think this might apply to the way we see life in general.
I'm sure it
I try
does.
really, really hard to, and I think generally, I think I naturally tend to be positive, but also I try hard to be positive. Does that make sense? So I think it's both. But I think, so when I read something somebody says, like I hear something somebody says, I'm generally going to take it as a compliment because
why not?
I figure, generally speaking, I think people like me and respect me. Now, that's not to say I'm not an idiot. There are people who hate me.
We need to come back
I know
to that.
But generally speaking, people that I know, I think, like me and or think good things about me. Now, this individual, I haven't talked to her in ages. So is it possible that, she's gotten offended and meant something terrible and negative by her comment? Sure, but am I going to take it that way? No. I just want to take things to be positive. And I can be overly see the glass half full.
Well, because,
you know?
and part of that for you, and then we'll talk about me, but part of that for you is you want life to be fun, right?
And good and positive. And
yeah. Which I suppose you could say, well, anybody wants that, but I think there are personalities that, definitely are more geared at. I'm okay with some things being a bit more just mundane or routine or whatever. I don't need it to be, fun, so to speak. But that, I don't know that plays in big time. I'm just thinking, I think that there's lots of things, that's a little thing probably, but there's lots of little things for all of us that I think bend how we see things. Maybe it's like that whole concept of how light, refracts, I think is the right word. I could be wrong on that, but like when it hits moisture and so forth. And so then you see colors and so forth. I think that happens for all of us. We're coloring or we're sorting things through. So to her point, I hate to say this because I don't like negativity, but I do think I tend to see, I would err more to the side of there's more people that don't really care for me than do. Which just said the opposite.
Which is bizarre.
Well, I mean, maybe.
Generally speaking, people like you.
So that's interesting. Here's the so it's getting awkward. Yeah. Internally, it's getting awkward. But here's the beauty of not only talking, but thinking about these things. It's what I did when Sandra said, no, that was a crazy positive comment. I went back and I looked and I thought, okay, more importantly than what the comment even was, why did I process it that way? And I genuinely am interested because, I love to learn. I love to grow. And I'm like, why would I default almost? I don't know that I default, but I in some ways do, to seeing things maybe more in a negative light. And I think that would be the beauty of these kinds of conversations and inner dialogue conversations as well, I'd like to see that improve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I'm going to give an example that we can actually talk about because it happened between us. So we're not,
great
talking about anyone else. So the other day, I met Seth and a friend at a coffee shop just briefly. Seth was already meeting with the friend and we met at a coffee shop and then we all left. And later that day, Seth said to me, I know that you feel like, we're getting older. Like we see things on our faces, in our bodies, like that we may not appreciate as much.
What did I say?
And Seth said, even though you're getting older, you look good.
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say?
I said, darling, and my goal was to get her to really hear me, really look. Let's make this a moment. It was supposed to be a good one. I'm not sure it was. But what I said is you are aging well.
I'm aging well.
That's a compliment. You are beautiful.
No, that is a compliment. And I chose to take it that way. But I did think later, there's a lot of women who would have been pissed at that compliment and they would have taken it negative.
Right.
There's a lot of women who would have been like, excuse me? I'm aging well? That's not you understand, like my point is I could have taken that completely negative. And in fact,
it is
when I thought of it later, I was like, did I just get slapped and take it as a compliment?
No.
Like, was I being foolish? There is a point of my being positive and seeing things positive that I sometimes think people mean things bad that I take good. And then I'm like, wait, am I the, the schmuck? Right? So
that's interesting.
That comment, I took it as positive. I think you meant it as positive, but had I had the perspective you did,
oh man, good point
on that comment on Facebook.
Yeah, that's so interesting because, and this, what a great example. Because honestly, when she showed up at that coffee shop, sat down in that meeting, seriously, so the first thing that kind of happened is the friend I was meeting with he and Sandra kind of started, because she had just shown up, right? So they were having some dialogue, and I was just looking at her. So they're dialoguing, and I'm sitting next to her kind of like this, and I just looked at her. I'm like, she is stunningly beautiful. That's what I was thinking. And
but
does she look
You're
like
aging well?
because she doesn't look like she did when I married her a lot of years ago. 30 what? How many years? 35 years ago. But you're every bit as beautiful, but she doesn't look the same. And okay, you're right. I'm glad you took it as a compliment, because it was a deep, heartfelt thing for me that I meant as a compliment. And great example though of how wrong. And you know what? I mean, as she brings that up, there have been moments in our relationship where it hasn't gone that well, where it was intended as a compliment, but it didn't get taken that way. Probably more by me, but I can remember a time or two even by her. So it's just good to, I suppose, recognize this. And I hope it creates some inner, that we learn and grow, but also as in relationships. I mean, if that had bugged you and you hadn't been able to take it positive, I would have wanted you to say something, even though it might have been a difficult interaction. I would have wanted her to say something, because I would want to make that right. Mm. Now, I suppose the downside is, what if there are people, what if we at times say things and we really do mean them mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously there's other issues at play there. Then,
yeah. But I think part of what I see in this is when we hear something about ourselves, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The comment on Facebook that was directed to you, mm-hmm. and that comment directed to me. So we can take it as a compliment.
Right.
But then even later when that came back to me of like, what? No, that was rude.
Oh,
then
that's too bad. Yeah.
I have to be aware of my thoughts enough to say, no, that's not how he meant it. Or to go ask. This is where we end up with so much pain in our lives that is absolutely foolish and pointless.
Yeah, because we just don't ask.
If I felt that way, and I did, when I thought that, I thought, oh, I'm going to ask him about that. And then I knew we had the shoot coming up, and we were already talking about the Facebook comment. I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to ask, because this is perfect.
It's perfect on camera.
Let's talk about it on camera. But really, like, my thought was, I do want to talk about it, but because we had this, I thought it's a perfect example, and we can talk about it in such a way that you have because I know him, he will prep, and then he can say all the right things and make it sound really good.
Get all the image right.
Get the image right. So I like to spring it on him, and especially on camera, because he doesn't have a chance then.
And the funny thing is I don't mind it. It's funny. I don't know. You're right. I would prep.
But the reality is, and the thing I had to realize and think about is, okay, whether that comment was meant as a compliment or as a little bit of a jab, either way, I get to determine and remember what my self-worth is and what my identity is.
So good.
Because bottom line,
so good.
It doesn't matter. Like, you can think that I'm aging well in a bad way, and I can look at that and go, yeah, I am. And I can, even if it was meant negative, I can turn that positive, because, and the reason and the value in that is because I want my identity to be so settled and so sure that I'm not thrown by a little comment like that. Yeah, so I think that's why there are a lot of people who would take that negative and it would hurt them. And then the response would be to hurt you back.
Yeah.
And then you have this fighting. And I'm like, no, whether he meant it negative or not, who cares?
Right.
Bottom line is, I am beautiful. I am valuable. God loves me. The way I look, every part about me, God still loves me. Now, I can still determine if I want to do something about that, to change things, to look different, whatever. I can put on makeup or not, or whatever, based on what I want.
Yeah.
But that doesn't need to speak to my identity at a deep core level. And I think that's the value in this conversation is how are you taking the comment? And if it could be positive or it could be negative, what are you going to do with that? And does it matter when it comes to your identity?
Yeah.
Does that need to speak to your identity? And
Right.
sometimes it might need to,
Yeah.
and sometimes it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
But recognizing,
So good,
am I
Sandra.
going to let this affect how I see myself, how I view myself, my heart?
Yeah.
And therefore, a lot of people would pick a fight
Sure.
from that
Sure.
intentionally.
Which
And that's
is
not what I'm trying to do.
well, right, because at that point, I was going to say that's unfortunate because if there needs to be dialogue, let's say you did take that completely negative, then there needs to be conversation. There needs to be communication. Does there need to be a fight? Well, I suppose there should have been, let's say you come to me and you say, well, that really wasn't very nice.
Yeah.
That
felt like this.
oh, well,
Right.
so you're
Yeah.
getting old, woman. I'm going extreme, right? I suppose there's people who would do that. That would be really bad. But most of the time, I would think, at least if there's somewhat healthy adults that are interacting, you would have that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm glad on camera we had this conversation because it's important to me that
Yeah.
that was a deeply heartfelt. I just looked at you in that coffee shop and thought, this lady, oh my goodness, she's stunning, And so I should have said that.
Yeah, just leave it at that. You don't have to say anything about age.
I thought I was being creative, maybe. I don't know. I probably didn't think. That's probably what it comes down to.
But you say that then I can ask or I can have that conversation. And I can.
Yes.
And I think that's needed
the
and
thing.
important. But also, there is a part of me that goes, if I don't need to ask. I can just go, right?
Well, if you can be okay with it.
Well, same with the comment on Facebook, though.
Yeah.
Are you going to go ask that person?
Oh, I thought about it. I thought, well, I could. But I thought, I don't need to. Sandra's right. There's really I reread it. I thought, wow, I can see why she saw a compliment in there,
Yeah.
And I thought, it wasn't that big a deal. The comment wasn't that big a deal. It was my internal response that bugged me that I wanted to dig into and go, why did I do that?
Yeah. But
that's what mattered to me in that
if there's a
situation,
moment where you can't talk to the person, you can't ask them, you can learn how to settle the thing in your own heart between you and God. And that is very valuable.
I had a moment just this morning. So speaking to this thought that, we can change that perspective, right? If need be. So like we had a situation this week that has been challenging and maybe more challenging than it needed to be. I don't know, but just because, you let things get emotional and so forth. And at any rate, I personally was, you were too, but navigating this, and it was difficult. Sandra very kindly, knowing that I was struggling, came to me with a couple of scriptures. This was a few days ago. Well, then this morning, I reread a verse. No, I didn't reread. I found a verse that spoke to this issue for me. And then I read right on down. And what was following 2 and 3 verses later? One of the scriptures you gave me. And so I tied the two together. And you know what I stopped and did at that moment is I thought, I don't know how Jesus sees this. What is God's view? I hadn't stopped in this whole scenario and thought, God, what do you see here? Now, I just did this morning, so I want to spend more time on that. But see, there's so many angles. It might be you need to go to an individual, but it also might be just, some internal work, or it might be going to God and saying, God, what do you see here? What is your view? What's your opinion? What's your perspective?
This is that.
And that takes time. You got to do that.
Yeah. And this is that element of always placing God's opinion over man's opinion. And that is really, I think that's what I'm saying. Like when we have a relationship, I can come and ask you or say, that almost felt negative.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Right.
Or if I don't have that much of a relationship or can't get in touch with that person.
Right.
There's this element of going, God's opinion is better, bigger, more important than man's opinion.
Yeah.
And therefore,
sometimes bigger than our own opinion.
Always bigger than our own opinion.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
like, how can I see this the way God sees it so that I'm not being whatever?
Yeah.
So I'm not being hurt, maligned,
Right.
thinking of myself terribly, etc., based on what some human says.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
God's opinion
Yeah.
is, number one, more true.
Yeah.
He's smarter, wiser, bigger. It's more impactful to have his opinion than to have any human's opinion.
Absolutely.
And I think that's bottom line
Yeah.
in this. Hopefully we can see
So good.
and take things in a positive way.
Yeah.
But secondarily, understanding that no matter what somebody said, even if it was meant as a jab, as a mean, as a harsh, to tear you down, what does God say? Because his opinion is bigger than that
It's bigger
individual's
and better.
opinion.
Yeah.
And truer.
And truer. Gosh, it's so good, that the one of the scriptures I'm referring to is in Philippians 2, and there's many other scriptures we can go to where we're given very clear directives on how we should think. And I think that's not the only piece to what we're unpacking here, but what we think, you know. And so taking God's view and opinion of how we should think
Yeah, exactly.
and applying it in every situation, stopping ourselves in our own tracks and saying, well, hold on. Are you thinking on what is beautiful and wonderful
Good
and kind and good and true and oh my goodness, am I doing that?
Right.
Okay, well, stop myself in the tracks and change it, if need be, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this has helped some people. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I hope it's I hope, for you, this has certainly been eye-opening for me. And I see an opportunity at some growth, which is exciting.
Always good.
And so I hope maybe it's done that for a few of you. And as always, we welcome your comments. We welcome your questions. We welcome your ideas. Maybe you want, this talked about in a different way or other things, we want to hear what we think about them. We'd be happy to, but we'd happy to interact with you. We're not hard to find. So search us out, find our website, respond here on this video, whatever. We'd love to interact with you. So anything else? No. All right. Well, I guess that's it for now then. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next Awkward Conversation.
We would love to invite you to like, subscribe, share, ring the bell to get notifications to our Awkward Conversations channel. And I just want to encourage you. I know some of you are sharing. Please share. Help us get the word out. Not because of anything we're doing, but we believe that what we're doing is making an impact and helping others. So share our stuff, help others as well, and get the word out.